This episode of Gather and Go is sponsored by Coastal Mississippi. Play Coastal Mississippi. 62 miles of shoreline, outdoor adventures, casinos, fishing, and fantastic food. Perfect for fun-filled itineraries. Visit coastalmississippi.com and go have some fun for fun's sake. All right, everybody. My guest today is an Emmy and James Beard award-winning TV personality, chef, writer, and traveler. He's the creator of hit TV shows including the Bizarre Foods franchise, What's Eating America, The Zimmern List, and more. He serves as a global goodwill ambassador for the United Nations World Food Program and the Nature Conservancy. Today you can see him on Magnolia Network's Family Dinner, where he explores culture, geography, and history through meals with ordinary families throughout America. Andrew Zimmern, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. How are you?
I am doing great. Excited to have you here. I would love for you to tell us your story about how you went from being a culinary expert who nobody knew outside of Minneapolis to this travel icon who people all around America know. How did that happen for you?
Don't sell me short. The show airs in 170 countries. Well, it's funny. I mean, because I think it plays to your question. I don't say it with ego. It's just a fascinating thing about the way media moves 20 years ago and even more so today with streaming. I'm arguably more popular in Italy and Chile and Japan today than I was at any other time in my career, despite the show having been on for a long time there. It continues to air there, and my other shows continue to air there. And with every month that passes and the HBO Max streamer, which carries all of the Warner Brothers Discovery products, that's 9 of my shows, air all over the world. There's new generations of people discovering what I did or what I continue to do, as long as it's on the Warner Brothers Discovery family of networks, and a lot of my stuff is. It's interesting. It's like coming back to the place that you always were to find that you had never left, sort of story. When I grew up, I traveled a lot with my parents. I had probably been around the world twice by the time I had graduated high school, mostly with my father. My mother wrote books about shells and did a lot of stuff in the Caribbean and South America. My father made sure that I saw Europe and Asia as a young man. And we continued to go back to Europe and Asia every year on a big trip, always centered around skiing. And or if my father, who was in an international business, had, my parents were divorced. If I was with him, he took me. So it was a very odd sort of childhood, but it was really, really great. And so, you flash ahead, and I have this culinary career and fairly well known in the 80s in New York in the restaurant world. Then crashed and burned on a lot of drugs and alcohol, made it out of New York alive, got sober in January of 92 in Minnesota, opened up a restaurant here. It was very successful. And I found myself telling a lot of stories. Wednesday nights, for some reason, were slow in our restaurant. So because I had spent a lot of time in Asia and I loved cooking Chinese and Vietnamese food, we started doing that as a special menu on Wednesdays. It went over great. So I was telling stories to my staff and try to get them engaged in the culture of those countries. And I realized that maybe I needed a bigger audience. So I started, but by the way, I should say at that time I was doing walk-on roles on early Gen 1 HGTV shows, on early Gen 1 syndicated shows like Rebecca's Garden, where I was on both shows, typical Mary Ellen and Rebecca's Garden, I was the sort of the house chef. So whenever they needed something cooked, I'd get $50 and I'd come on and cook something. And I because of that, I got to gather tape, and I was pushing it around, and eventually I got a meeting at Travel Channel, and they said, well, what do you want to do? And I pitched them on a horrific show. Terrible. The working title was The Wandering Spoon. I would go around the world and teach people about patience, tolerance, and understanding through food. And they said, that's great. That's a superb PBS show. You'll probably make 8 or 10 of them, and you'll get a lot of applause from your peers, and then you're back at square one. But come back tomorrow, and if you can give us a hook, and if you can make this 70% entertainment, 30% learning, as opposed to 70% learning, 30% entertainment, we'll talk more. And so I did, and that's how Bizarre Foods was born. They said, "Great, go make 5 minutes of it." Then it was like, "Go find a production company, make a pilot." Then it was, you just kept going through the steps. Now you have to remember, Bizarre Foods first episode dropped in 2007. We made it in 2006. We sold it in 2005. So you're talking about 2003 and 4. I was in my sales mode for this. So there weren't a lot of shows on that were also doing this kind of thing. Bourdain had not started a cook's tour, which originally was on Food Network, for a year before it got renamed and relaunched on Travel Channel as No Reservations. So, we were just learning as we were going. But the one thing that I knew was stuff around the world for at least the first couple seasons that we could go and see. And so to pitch a show about Seoul, Korea, and say we're going to go to Noryangjin Seafood Market and we're going to see some fish and other sea creatures, sea squirts, something that Americans had really never seen before, was kind of a no-brainer. And around it, we were going to build these other stories. And secretly, it was kind of the Trojan horse I sold the network. We were going to teach people about patience, tolerance, understanding with other people in a world that was seemingly growing in its appetite for defining ourselves by our differences. And that's really how it was born. The show, episode 1 did okay. Episode 2 did a little bit better, 10th of a rating point. And episode 3 was the one, the dirty secret of TV is everything is about episode 3. You need audience to find the show on their guide, in those days, TV guide. We all have built-in guides in our TVs right now and whatever platform we're watching. But audience has to find it. And even back then, there were a lot of shows, so you had to, and there was no marketing of a new show. They don't throw marketing dollars at it. They just hope people find it and it takes off, and it's a lot of luck. And the 3rd episode aired and the ratings were down. And we knew what was coming, which was no sale on season 2 and, okay, look for another job. And I was very depressed. And that was a Monday night it aired. Tuesday morning, I got the ratings. Wednesday morning, I get a phone call from the booker at the Jay Leno show saying that they had seen a piece of tape of episode 3 where a shaman in Otavalo, Ecuador, a witch doctor, gave me an exorcism. And it was a horrific experience. And visually, it was TV gold. And they thought it was the greatest thing they'd ever seen. And they said, "Can you come out and be on the show this Thursday?" I said, "No, I can't. I couldn't get there in time, but I could be there Friday." And they said, "Okay." And so I went on the Leno show Friday, and the next Monday night, the ratings were through the roof, and the rest is history.
Wow, that's amazing. So you're coming close to 2 decades in TV, much longer than that in travel. How have you seen travel change, say from when you were traveling as a kid to traveling in the 2000s, and then now we're in the 2020s? You're still out there. What has changed about travel?
The knowledge of the traveler. Um, when when I was traveling with my father in the 60s and 70s, you knew where you were going. You maybe had a Frommer's guide or something that was already years out of date by the time it publishes. Uh, you went to your place, and then you had to seek out wisdom once you were there on what you were going to do. The concierge in the hotel, or the friendly person at the bus station, or the shopkeeper who spoke your language, quickly became the person who gave you your itinerary, right? Uh, I think people today forget that, in the 60s, the 70s, there's no computers, there's no cell phones, there's magazine articles that are out of date, books that are out of date, and you kind of cobble together a list of things you like and want to see, and you then went, verified that it was there, and then head out to experience it. Nowadays, you can literally plan everything on your cell phone, your laptop. I mean, you can see video of what you're going to eat 3 nights later in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. I mean, that's crazy to think that that's how far we've come. And so I think the yes, of course, places change, people change, cultures change, geopolitical forces are at work, so that the face of an entire country changes. I was just, the last time that I was in Europe and in Poland. Poland is a different country in 2022, 23 than it was in 1972 when my father went there and I couldn't go because it was a communist country and it was not appropriate for him to bring me. So, you know, entire worlds change, right? Australia, which is now everyone's, one of everyone's dream sort of destinations, was, a bunch of sleepy little cities. But now, because of the international business boom there, the migration, the emigration there from Southeast Asia has literally changed the face of that country. The wine industry, the cheese making industry, the growth of culinary makers there has created a food and wine culture in Australia that is world class and as good as anywhere else. So people now can go seek that out in a way that they didn't seek it out before. And I think media has a lot to do with that. You can see where you're going and see if you want to do it. So I think the biggest change is the ability for the traveler to understand where they're going and to be able to make decisions. Now that makes it a lot more competitive on the ground for the people who are supplying services, whether it's restaurants or car services or hotels or ticket brokers for theater in London. I remember going with my father, and we'd never buy tickets for theater. You walk up and you get not so great seats. Sometimes you luck out and you get great seats. But we would go to theater almost every night in London when I was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, whenever we would stop on the way back to the United States, because it was easy to get a flight from London to New York. And my father loved London. Now, good luck, right? I mean, it's the same thing like going to New York. You got to buy your tickets way in advance. So it's pretty, I think it's changed dramatically, some for the better, some for the worse. I think the act of getting out of your comfort zone has decreased. Because for those that don't want to get out of their comfort zone, they can now plan a trip that way. They don't have whereas before you didn't have a choice. And I think the reason that that's a shame is that travel's transformative. I don't know of anything else other than personal tragedy that can change a human being. Uh, you go away on a trip. You have to ask questions. You don't know where you're going. You have to be curious. You take more risks. You do things you would never do at home, right? At home, I'm never leaving the house at 8 in the morning and going seeing new things I've never seen before until 10 o'clock at night. Just doesn't happen. And so the learning of other cultures that way, taking all those risks, you import some of that wisdom and that healthy bravado and that curiosity. You bring that back home and it expands your horizons. And you become more patient, tolerant, and understanding with other people. You learn new ideas, different ways of doing things. And I think nowadays people can afford to play it safe, and they can actually plan, they can build that into their experience.
Yeah. So many people today are traveling based on a culinary experience they want to have. Maybe they've seen you do something, or they've seen an influencer on Instagram, a post about something amazing. How do people maintain that authentic connection with the culture through a culinary experience when it's become so produced and staged? How do we get over that hump of the glossy, I want to go there because I saw it online, and find those amazing, authentic experiences that are going to create that transformation, and you're not just, posing for your next TikTok?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say that there's still a lot of places that are big viral social media moments and great magazine articles or online articles that when you get there are still not populated by a lot of people who look like us. It's fascinating to me. I was in Taipei right before COVID, and went to some of my favorite night markets, and it was, yeah, there were some tourists there, but it was mostly Taiwanese, and I found that really reassuring. I just remember being online for an oyster omelet, and it's sort of a cross between a Vietnamese banh xeo and an omelet the way we think about it, because they put a lot of rice flour that they've created a pancake on down first, then the oysters and vegetables, then they drizzle egg across the top, they fold it over, so it's kind of crispy on the bottom, eggy and oystery in the middle with vegetables. It's great, and there was a long line. There's one vendor there who does it better than others. He's got a long line. And I remember looking on the line and saying, well, at least I'm still the only person who looks like me. Now, if you want to go to, well, I'll give you a really recent example. I think the news broke last week that a taco vendor in Mexico City got a Michelin star or a Bib Gourmand notification. I have to reread the article. I've been away for 4 or 5 days in Las Vegas, going to 3 Dead and Company shows. So I'm behind on my food news, but I'm pretty sure that I have that right. Now, because so many people from America go to Mexico City, so many people from other South American capitals, Europe, and Mexico City is a huge food destination for so many people. I can't imagine how overwhelming that line there is now, right? And because of the ease of use, I think it's, does it mean you shouldn't go? No, you should go. Famously, what was it in Hong Kong? Tim Ho Wan got a Michelin star for their dumplings, and now there's 12 of them around the country. They've used that to leverage the success to expand. Should you still go to Tim Ho Wan in Hong Kong? Maybe. There's a lot of other people doing dumplings just as well. You don't have to wait online, and it's not going to cost you as much as it does at Tim Ho Wan. But I'm not sure that the overproduction and this food world that we live in that is dominated by the Instagram photo makes the food experience there any less enjoyable. Now, that being said, uh, in one of my episodes in Singapore, we went to Mary's Laksa, which I thought was the best laksa place that I had ever eaten that dish. And by the way, it's all they served. You know, they had 500 portions of noodles. They had enough laksa broth for 500 portions. Everything was geared to selling 500 portions from 11 in the morning till 11 at night. So I guess the next year, Bourdain went to Mary's Laksa. And at that point, they've got the two biggest travel food people at the time telling everyone to go to Mary's Laksa. Now, there aren't a lot of people going to Singapore, but there's enough. There's enough. And at that point, Singapore was getting hot, right? Got to go get a chili crab in Singapore. Got to go to Fish Head Apollo for the fish head curry. Got to go to Mary's Laksa. I mean, Singapore was a thing. It became a great food. Oh my God, hawker stalls. I mean, you have to remember when Bourdain and I made our Singapore shows, which were in the same year and aired a couple months apart, there really weren't food halls in America. So people were looking at these hawker centers and thinking to themselves, well, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. So you go in and there's like 50 vendors and you can choose your own adventure. I mean, okay, let's go to Singapore. Now, I went back to Singapore about, 7 years later. And I took my family and got in a car and went out to Mary's Laksa, and there's a much bigger line. And I hop in and, sitting there online, my baseball cap, I'm not playing the celebrity card or anything like that. And I guess someone recognized me and from the staff and went inside and told Mary's daughter, who spoke English, and Mary's daughter comes out and she starts screaming at me. You and Tony, you ruined this business. And she's sort of half joking, but half not. And she said, we now, basically once she calmed down, she explained to me that, they had to quadruple what they were serving. They felt it was too overwhelming. I thought it was as good as ever. I mean, they just were producing more. They bought a couple other burners. They did more prep. They rented a little place to do more prep. Like, they're clearly doing better financially. And in America, we would say, well, that's great news. You've expanded and you've quadrupled your sales, which means you've brought quite a lot of more dollars to the bottom line. Mary and her daughter didn't care about the bottom line. They were earning enough. They supported the family. They had a lovely life. They opened at 11. They closed at 11. It was easy. It was manageable. And in a sense, and this is, by the way, pre-cell phone, right? And pre-social media, when Tony and I went there, they felt it had already sort of changed what they did. So there is that, Brian, your point is well taken. At a certain point, depending what place it is, too much tourism can trample over what made it appealing in the first place to want to be there, right? And I think that's your point about discovering new stuff, right? And so what I do, I always go, a recent trip to Cartagena is probably a great example of it. I wanted to try new places and new things. I knew I was going to go to certain markets, and the fruit market and the wet market, and because I love eating in those places. Couple good restaurants in the old city that I wanted to go to. But what I did was I went on Instagram and I found the local food guy, not at the national newspaper, but at the local weekly. And I started following him, and I started following a couple of local chefs down there. And I sort of triangulated where they were taking pictures of with their family on like Saturday or so. Oh, Sunday with the family at this place that serves fried fish at the beach. And I'm like, bingo. I get there, and it wasn't my first time, and I'd made TV there. And so the hotel that I always stay in, there's like a big to do, and the concierge, and he's got all this. You have to try this, this, and this. There's these new restaurants. They really want you to try it, and all the rest. I said, well, no, 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 no. And they took my bags up, and I walked, because I knew if I didn't get to the guys who were running the door, valeting cars and physically opening the door for entrance, the doormen, if I didn't get to them first, I'd have a problem. So I raced back out, and I grabbed one of the valet guys, one of the door guys, and I just quizzed them. I mean, I'm writing stuff into my phone. Where do you go after work? They're like, oh, you should go to a place. No. I don't want to, not you should go. Where do you go after work? I bet you go to a place for like beer and food when you're off before you go home. And they're like, yeah, we do. Where do you go? And there was this little fratanga around from the hotel. And it was sort of a block or two off the grid, in the sense that the neighborhood transitioned into a real working class neighborhood in the old city. And I went there every single night with my family. They had the best fried everything, what a fratanga is. They had all of these 20 different juices to choose from. They always had a couple of non-fried items that were sort of like stewed things that grandma made. You had to get there early for it. Someone put music on a boombox on the top of a car, and there was dancing in the street. And my point is, if you want the authentic experiences, you have to ask local people where they go. Because in these times, the dissemination of information about all the cool hip places is already out there. There's already a line in that place. You got to find the stuff that you like through your own sort of navigation tools. And I think look, it's tough for some people. I know folks that travel with me are kind of sick and tired of it, but I nonstop am asking cab drivers, what's your favorite place to eat? What's the best fratanga in town? What's the best bar? And you just write them down. And when two or three people you've asked in a day all mention this one arepa stand across from the government center, you go to that arepa stand. And that's literally, I'm being honest, 100% honest. That's how I got to the new arepa stand, because the old arepa stand that I had loved so much had a line down the block, and it was now like 3 or 4 young guys doing it and not the grandma, because business was too big. It overwhelmed her. And I think then the arepa changes, right? So I had to find the new place that's undiscovered.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of people traveling with you, you are getting involved in group travel this year. You've got an opportunity coming up for people to travel with you, I believe, in Italy. Tell us how that came about and what you're anticipating with that.
I don't know what I'm anticipating.
You don't know what you got yourself into.
The single biggest question for the last 25 years of my life, which is my public era, has been, how do we travel with you? Like actually with you, not where you pop in for an hour each day, but like where we're actually traveling with you. And I'm like, you don't. I mean, it's like, that's not, I mean, I just couldn't think of a weirder situation. And we were having an internal meeting here at my office, and I thought to myself, well, I think at a certain point, maybe I'm being unfair to the people that are asking, and maybe I'm making it too much about me. And so maybe I should try it. What's the worst thing that can happen? And so I called a friend of mine who has a group called, it's modernadventure.com. You can go there and sign up for my trip to Sicily. If there's a wait list, we'll probably do it a second time. I love Sicily. I love islands. I'm obsessed with islands. It's the Darwinian theory. Food and food style, things leave islands slowly. They tend to be protected there. And things that arrive on islands are often rejected. People like their turf. And so, Sicily and Sardinia and, Capri and all the great islands, in Italy they're just different. And they've maintained that identity. And I love being able to traverse a place quickly. So, if you love something and it's in a town an hour away, well, crap, that's only an hour away. I'll drive 3 hours for dinner if it's good. I've driven 11 hours, actually, I think is my record for driving for dinner. And stayed overnight in the town and drove back. So, I just thought, well, let's give it a try. And so they let me curate the trip with them. And it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm doing, it's interesting. We went, there's 2 or 3 places where we're going where, the grandmas at the farm are making us a farmhouse dinner, and the farm produces, they grow fruit, they grow olives, it's their olive oil. There's some wine, there's some this, the cousins make cheese at the dairy out back. I mean, it's a real agroturismo, right? That happens to specialize in food fit for human consumption. So it's very popular. So, I'm going there. I want to cook with the grandmas. So I said to the folks at the travel group, I said, I don't want to do a demo the following night back at our hotel. I want to cook with the grandmas. And they're like, okay. So I'm going to do a dish that night for our group. We have a couple fake free nights where you're on your own, go where you want to go, but I'm secretly making a reservation for really good restaurant places I like. And if 5 people want to go, great. If 10 people want to go, great. And so we'll be able to bring people on other aspects of travel. The funny one was the markets. In markets, I like to go by my nose, and I have a way of sussing things out. I always bring a pocket knife, and I want to eat in the markets. And if they're like, well, what do you do at the fish market? I said, I buy a piece of fish, and then I go to a local restaurant. I say, we're all going to sit down. It's like a corkage fee. I get it. You're going to charge me, but here's an 8-pound piece of Mediterranean swordfish. Do something with it. There's 12 of us or whatever. I mean, that's how I like to travel. And so we've got an opportunity for that. And it's going to be a blast. And I think, if folks are interested, go to modernadventure.com and you can find the Andrew Zimmern Sicily trip and sign up or get on the wait list. I honestly mean what I wouldn't put this out there in the public, but if the wait list gets big, we'll do a second trip. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm excited. I mean, look, I am a people person. I do like going out and spending time with people. Otherwise I wouldn't have decided to do this at all. But I think it should be fun. I'm hoping I learn as much from everyone else as they're able to learn from me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're excited for you to cross over into our world of group travel. I'm sure there are things you're going to learn, but I'm also sure you're going to have a great time. So welcome to the family.
I think so too. I mean, look, the world isn't made up of cars and watches and rest of the world is made up of people. And there are certain groups of people that I feel really at home with. People who love to travel for food and go to eat for the travel. Those are my people. And I know that people who are coming on this trip with me have to feel the same way. I mean, you're not going to go to Sicily and do it with me if that's not your thing. I mean, why would you go? So I'm really pretty excited.
Wow, that's wonderful. So that trip is coming up. Is there anything else that you want people to know about?
Well, everything is on andrewzimmern.com. I mean, I do have I've got shows on, and thank you, you're very kind to mention Family Dinner. It's nominated for an Emmy as of as of this recording, I don't know when this airs, but the daytime Emmys are June 7th in LA. So if it airs after that, I may have won or lost. But I'm really excited. That's a very cool thing. But I have two shows on Tastemade and Outdoor Channel, Wild Game Kitchen and Field to Fire, which are cooking shows. And we're working on some travel shows right now because travel is, quote unquote, back. I believe it's back. And so we're working on some of those so people can look forward to that. But you can find everything at andrewzimmern.com. My Substack is where all the new stuff is happening, and that's pretty cool. I love that community. It's gotten pretty large and pretty fun, and I can legitimately say the people who subscribe to my Substack newsletter get several things in their inbox every week that nobody else gets, so that's a lot of fun. But you can learn everything at andrewzimmern.com. Everything I do is on the navigation bar across the top. It's an award-winning, fun website, so if listeners haven't been there, you should go to andrewzimmern.com.
Yeah, wonderful. We will link to all of those things. Before we let you go, we have some just for fun questions we ask everybody, so you can answer off the top of your head. No pressure. When you book travel, are you booking a window seat or an aisle seat?
Aisle always. 2B, Shakespeare seat.
The Shakespeare seat. My seats usually aren't in the single digits. I'm not quite at that phase of my travel career.
I just have a lot of miles. That's all it is. I'm a man of the people. I just have a lot of miles. But I would say 99%. And obviously, if I'm traveling overseas, it's not 2B because it's a whole different thing. But on domestic travel, it's always the Shakespeare seat.
Yeah, I love that. So what's something you pack in your carry-on that you wouldn't travel without?
Usually my hot water maker. A lot of hotels don't have them. And I don't want to draw hot water out of that shitty coffee machine that's in the hotel. So I have really good freeze-dried, there's places like Panther Coffee and stuff that make a freeze-dried that's really, really good. And I don't have time, sometimes I'm in a Red Roof Inn in the middle of Arkansas making television. Not a knock against Red Roof Inn or Arkansas. Love it. I'm just saying like a real sort of motel experience in a place that's very much off the grid. And I'm not driving to Starbucks. I mean, it's craziness, right? I want coffee in my room. So I like my hot water. I can put socks in it. So it doesn't take up any more or less space. It plugs in. I can make my instant coffee. I can make tea at night. I have hot water for instant ramen, which I always travel with. You never know when you're going to skip a meal, and that's terrifying to me. So, yeah. And lots of cords and lots of batteries. I like to be connected.
Yeah, absolutely. My carry-on is just a mess of cords all tangled together, but I always have one when I need one. So that's what's important. Okay, so if you've got a week with nothing else to do and your favorite airline says, Andrew, we'll take you wherever you want to go, where are you going to pick?
Lalumanu Beach in Samoa, not American Samoa. Lalumanu Beach in Samoa, Lalumanu. You can actually, it's a great beach, but you can actually pay like $20 a night, and there's like tree houses, these palapas up in these trees, and you can stay there. And for another $4, the kids that work there will make you breakfast, which, by the way, includes them diving in the water and grilling a fish for you to have with your papaya and other fruit wild that comes off the trees. And it's, and an egg. I mean, it's Lalumanu Beach is one of those places I've been that I will never forget. And it's, by the way, sure, do I want to be, in a $1 million house that's a VRBO in the Algarve in Portugal and have that kind of vacation? Yeah, but I'd rather be way off the grid and really able to relax where there's no internet, there's no phones, and it's just me and my treehouse for 7 nights and a stack of books. You said a week, right? And I know I'm going to eat fruit and seafood 3 meals a day. I'm going to come back looking great, rested, head cleared, and it is that part of Samoa. More, I know it's remote. It's not. I mean, you got to fly to Hawaii to American Samoa, and then a puddle jumper from American Samoa, which is not worth visiting at all, to Samoa. And I mean, it is, Gauguin, Robert Louis Stevenson. It is one of the most beautiful places on planet Earth, and I love it.
Wow, that's amazing. So the last question is, what is something you have seen or done on the road that you wish you could go back and experience again with someone you love?
Oh my God. So, I mean, that's a tough question for me. And the reason is everywhere I went, not that, well, yes, even in season one, between Bizarre Foods, Delicious Destinations, and a lot of the other travel shows and things that I've done, I get special access from the country to go to special places that you can't get into, right? We did 24 tribal shows in Bizarre Foods history. These are all protected peoples that the government doesn't allow them to interact with foreigners at the tribe request, right? So you have to put in, as a journalist, you have to submit, an application to spend time with them. To take my family, my son, to spend time with the Juntoisi in Botswana, or some of the other tribal peoples in Amazonia that I've been with, or tribal peoples in the Golden Triangle is dangerous, right? A lot of drug runners there and international narco traffickers. But there's also tribal peoples there who live in the mountains and hills that some of the greatest experiences of my life, just living with people who live indistinguishably from the way their ancestors did 30,000 years ago. And so, those are the things that I'd love my son to experience. And I'm not sure we'll ever be able to do that. Those are singular things. In some cases, not because of our behavior or anything, but the politics of the country have changed, or there's some other situation that has now made spending time with them impossible. The Juntoisi in Botswana were the ones in that movie, The Gods Must Be Crazy, where the Coca-Cola bottle falls from Earth. It's a famous foreign film for anyone who's interested in watching it. Then there was our show. Those are the only two pieces of media that ever been created. I mean, that's it. And I'm not sure the government of Botswana is going to let anyone else live with the Juntoisi for 12 days the way we did. So, I mean, that's pretty hardcore. As a chef, I was invited to cook in the Great Hall of the People in China. I would love to bring some of my chef buddies and my kid over there to cook another meal there, just because it's the largest kitchen on planet Earth. No one's ever seen anything like it. The food is insane. And those are the kinds of things that I look back on in my career, and I'm just like, I can't believe I got to do that. And that kind of thing is just absolutely second to none. My Iceland episode, we went out to this little island, and you have to climb this rope to get to the top of it. It's uninhabited, to shoot puffin, and then we cook them on top of this rock that is really just something from a million years ago that was a volcano explosion, and the molten lava came out of the ground fast and hot enough, created this little landmass. And over tens of thousands of years, dirt and turf accumulated there, and that's where millions of puffin call home. And so there's actually, you get a license to go out there and kill some puffin and eat them. Spending time in the Faroe Islands, living with families there, air drying their local wild lambs, and going into the water for crayfish as big as your forearm. I mean, I got to pinch myself. Namibia with the Himba tribe. I don't think anyone else is going to be able to live with them. They're now being adopted into society at their own request. They don't want to be a pastoral people anymore. but I got to live with them when they were a pastoral people. Those are the things that kind of blow my mind. Although there was one, we went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Israel, and on a show. And there's a tomb there that supposedly contains the body of Christ. And you line up and you wait hours and you walk by it and you can sort of peek in. They let my cameraman and I go in there and there's a little bowl with sand, and they let us light a candle inside it with the door closed. And my cameraman at the time was French Catholic, and he just started sobbing being in that room. And then I start crying, and, we got out, and, you can count on one hand the number of people that have been let in there in the last 25 years. I love to hunt. So hunting at Balmoral, with Winston Churchill's old shotgun, and, with the royal retinue and the whole thing. I mean, that kind of stuff, I don't know. And then as big and fancy as that sounds, the dinner I had in Belize with a Maya family that were speaking a dead language and cooked me food that is not cooked anymore. And they're one of the grandmother in that family, they owned nothing. They owned a couple chickens and a pig, and they killed a couple chickens to make us a meal. And spending a day with them, no one will ever get to do that again. It just doesn't exist. Those people, it just doesn't exist anymore. And so it's pretty rarefied air. I'm a pretty lucky guy.
Yeah. Well, whether you're out there tasting some of the world's most incredible and interesting foods, or you're someone who's guiding people through the national park in your backyard, I think we're all really blessed to get to make our living in travel. So, Andrew, it's been a delight to have you. Thanks so much for joining us and sharing so much of your perspective.
I appreciate it, Brian. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us for this interview. I want to let you know that conversations like this are just part of what you will hear if you tune into a full episode of the Gather and Go podcast. When you listen, you'll get travel news you may not hear anywhere else, along with some really helpful road tips, some smart analysis, and maybe even a hot take from me about issues that are impacting travel right now. Now, you can hear this full episode along with many others by searching for Gather and Go in your favorite podcast player, or you can click on the link right below this video or one of the videos right here to my side. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.